I actually think email works better. We don't answer any of those calls. So it's if you get through, it's kind of like more of an annoyance to our team than anything else.
This episode is brought to you by Isometric Technologies, ISO, the ultimate freight broker's secret weapon. With ISO, you'll have access to industry-wide service performance benchmarks, dynamic carrier and customer scorecards, and powerful analytics so you can understand your service strengths, address your weaknesses, and differentiate your carrier network from the competition. To learn more and get started, visit iso.io today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Freight Caviar Podcast. This time we're joined by Bill Loupée. He is the CEO of Ben B. Schwartz Produce Company, and we're excited to have you, Bill. I almost said Ben, but I said Bill. So let's get this show on the road. That was a couple takes. Let's kick things off. What's going on, Paul? Let's go.
Hey, everyone. Bill, thanks for joining us today. I think we'll have a really interesting podcast. You run produce, and honestly, right now with produce season, I think there's a lot of topics to discuss. So looking forward to it. Bill, if you could just kind of give us a quick introduction.
Sure. So first of all, thank you guys for having me. I've seen the Freight Caviar content for quite a while now. It's hilarious stuff for anybody involved in the freight world. So I love it. I know our staff here loves it too. So keep doing the good work you guys are doing. So you mentioned we're a produce company. We're a wholesale distributor based on the Detroit Produce Terminal. And the company's been around since 1906, so over 115 years. And we are buying produce from around the country, all the produce-affected regions that your transportation and brokerage companies always struggle in seasonally, California, Arizona, Texas, Florida. We're also importing through some ports, and so we're either drop shipping to our retail customers or we are bringing the product to Detroit, and we use Detroit as our hub to kind of mix and match whatever customers might order from us, and then we distribute, as far west is the Mississippi, south is Atlanta and Texas. We go to the East Coast to Virginia. We go up to Toronto and everywhere in between. So that's a little background on the company. A quick background on me. I spent the first 5 years of my career at Coyote Logistics. So I'm part of that Coyote Mafia that seems to be everywhere now. And then I went to a company called Sanwell Distribution based out of Buffalo. Same type of 3PL business, asset-based transportation, freight brokerage, warehousing, all things 3PL. And now I've been at Ben B. Schwartz in produce for a little over 3 years.
Very cool. So you have the brokerage, industry career as well. So you see both sides of things. And I guess I want to take it back now to your Coyote days. If you could kind of tell us a little bit about what your role is at Coyote, and now what have you taken away from that role to that you utilize on a daily basis running a produce company?
Yeah, good question. So when I was at Coyote, I kind of worked my way up. I started as just a carrier rep when I got there, just kind of one of the bros in the group right out of college, and then eventually I became. They had a role for a little bit called a conference coordinator, where you were kind of like a liaison between the carrier reps and the customer reps. So you'd quote for the customer reps, and you'd kind of buffer the bitching back and forth between the two groups, and then I managed the East Coast there. I managed the Midwest there for a little bit, and that's what I was doing when I left there. So, the interesting part is that I think I expected going to the shipper side it would be a lot more RFP based. It'd be a little less hustle and transactional. And then, coming here, to be honest, we run this place very similarly to a brokerage. We don't have customers. We're the only customer, which is the main difference. But as far as the way we buy trucks, it's very similar to being a carrier rep at Coyote or any other brokerage. We buy produce on speculation, and it helps us to buy it at the last minute because every additional day the produce is on the road is a day where the market value of that produce is changing. So we actually reduce our risk by buying trucks more on the spot market. And so that leads us to just kind of like a lot of last minute coverage, a lot of, I need you to pick this up in an hour or two. And we're not like, Coke or CPG company that's like, here's an RFP and I'm going to give you 72 hours lead time and send me back your bids for the whole year. It's a lot more.
So does that just mean that your lanes are super all over the place? Like, are you able to forecast it all? Like, how does that work?
So a little bit, but not enough for it to really be effective. There's seasonal trends in produce, and everybody in the freight world, knows, when Florida is going to tighten up and when that's going to be visible, and those things, we can see coming. But the part that we can't see coming is, so half of our business is either is what we call program based. And so that's where we're selling to retailers and it's predictable and it's easy. And like, that's the stuff that we can get ahead of. But a big portion of our business is in the produce world, what we call short buys. So like, if we were selling Walmart, for example, Walmart doesn't need Benby Schwartz to negotiate their grower deals for them. They're well capable of that on their own. But there's so many things that get screwed up in produce all the time. And that might be, disease in the crop, bad weather, logistics issues, unseasonably high demand at store level. All those things might leave them short of product at the last minute where their buyers didn't see it coming and they didn't buy, effectively enough to support that demand. So that's where they call us and they say, hey, Benby Schwartz, we need a load of blackberries to our DC and Mississippi we need it tomorrow morning. And so a big portion of our business is that. And so it's a little bit difficult for us to predict that part of the demand because we don't know what the issue is going to be, and it's always changing.
So in that sort of scenario with Walmart, if we just take that one, are they like going out to the market, to you and to your competitors and basically being like, here's what we need, give us a rate, essentially?
Essentially, yes. They're coming and they're saying, hey, we're short of X product. We need it here by this time. What's the price? And we'll give them a price per case. And so, it's essentially they call it a street buy, but it's the same thing as a spot buy in the freight world.
Hey there, amazing listeners. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on our podcast, we need your support. It will only take a moment, but it would mean the world to us. Please make sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to share with one of your friends that would enjoy our content. Your engagement helps us reach more people and bring more awesome episodes to you. Thanks a million, and thanks for being part of the podcast community.
So you're essentially operating as like a produce broker.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a produce broker, but the difference there is that like we have the assets to do the distribution, right? So So like our warehouse capabilities, or we might repack product. Like when you go to the store and you see clementines in the bag, we do that here as well. Or just simply having our trucks to get it out to their DC. It's you're a broker, but there's a distribution element to that too, with the assets.
Okay. Very interesting. I did want to highlight here that Bill sent us like this kind of some bullet points to talk about on the podcast, and both Rita and I were like pleasantly surprised by the topics that you chose to talk about. and it'd be cool if we just kind of hit each topic one by one, because I like your perspective on it, because you work with brokers nowadays. You used to be a broker, and you're in produce, so it's like, a lot of the freight that we're working on in produce is typically like perishables, so it's like you need to move it fast. It has to be usually reefer, event advance, stuff like that. But first point was percent of teams that deliver to us as strong singles in our attempt to contract that behavior. So this was the first bullet point you made. So I'm guessing this happens very often, that you get strong solo Sergeys delivering produce.
Guys, I was shocked when we started actually doc checking. I was like blown away. And now we talk about strong single Sergey in the office all the time. That's like a phrase that's just here all the time. So we do a ton of teams. We do a lot of teams, and we had an issue with paying a premium for teams, and the teams not getting here on time, and whatever excuse you want. My dog got sick, my mom's in the hospital, like my aunt has cancer, like a million different things. And I dropped off the driver in Indianapolis before I got to Detroit. It's all bullshit. So many excuses. And honestly, I don't know the exact percentage. We didn't track it, but I would say when we started really doc checking on the ones that we felt like weren't legitimate teams, it was like 50% of the time it was a certain strong single, and 50% of the time it was a true team. And so what we did to try to counteract that is, if you take a load from us and you say you're going to get us a team and it shows up as a single, no matter what the excuse is, we don't care. We're going to go to DAT. We're going to find the single rate off DAT for that lane, and then we're going to cut it in half, and that's what you're going to get paid. And so it's not foolproof, but it's got us probably up to, 90-95% now. So
that's pretty good.
Much better.
It's really good.
I can't believe, it's scary, honestly, the amount of strong singles out there that are like risking everybody's safety on the road to make an extra $1,000 on the load.
Yeah, no, it's really bad in the United States. They're driving really fast, and but okay. So next topic is why cradle to grave serves us better than a split model.
So when I came here in the beginning, I was a big Coyote advocate. I loved my time there, and I was like, all right, like the first new carrier I'm gonna add is gonna be Coyote. I know they do a good job, and it just doesn't work here. And I think that if we were like Campbell's, or we were, again, like a Coke or a Pepsi, it might work, because they're not as like white glove hypersensitive as we are. And it just didn't work here, because we need somebody that we can call 24/7 who knows what the is going on. Not like, let me check with my carrier team, or let me check with the guy who booked the load, and then he has to call the dispatcher, and the dispatcher has to call the driver, and then that information has to cycle all the way back. Like, it works better for us to work with like medium-sized produce niche brokers who cradle to grave it, and who you can call any time of the day, and they sacrifice their family time to answer the phone any time of day, and they have the answer like right at their fingertips. And that's definitely something that I was not expecting when I got here, but that seems to serve us best.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. Like I started at Echo, and in the Boston office, I was a carrier rep as well, but the Boston office was initially like a specific kind of acquisition, and so I ran a ton of produce for like 2 accounts that were like office accounts, and it was essentially run as like cradle to grave, because like the sales rep, there was like one dude, and we were right next to him, and we all got to know the accounts. And there were times where customers would call, and I didn't know the answer, and they were so unbelievably pissed, because they were used to that sort of more cradle to grave style. And I learned very, very quickly it was like trial by fire, right? Like you learn very quickly how like sensitive these things are and how high the demands are for like service, and screwing that up, losing a truckload can like lose a massive account like instantly. And it's just it's so sensitive, and there's really not much like it in other domains.
100%. And like people don't really understand what we go through on our side, like why we demand that. But like, let's say Meyer gives us an order for a full truckload of strawberries, for example. So let's say it's a hot market, it's $100,000 for the strawberries, right? And for us, we're timing that inbound truck to basically, for that product sometimes to go like right out. Like we literally pull it across the dock, put it on a Ben B truck, and that guy drives straight to wherever that DC is. And like we're always doing it at the absolute last minute. It's always like we're making cutoff at the DC by like 30 minutes. And we have to time it that way because we can't have 30 loads of strawberries just like sitting in our warehouse, just like waiting to see if an order is going to come or not. So, that's why like just the time sensitive nature of it. It's not like we're taking a load of widgets into the warehouse and we've got 100 of them and they're all going to sit there for 2 months and then we'll send them out as needed. It's just so fast paced and you have to be on it. The timing's got to be perfect.
It's funny. It's funny that on your end, there's this high level of urgency, but then when you juxtapose that with the experience oftentimes at like the coolers in the grower warehouses, and sometimes those take like you'll have a driver sitting there for a day waiting to get loaded at some of these facilities. So it's a very interesting juxtaposition. So what's your relationship, what's your experience like with growers and the cooler warehouses, especially, like I think West Coast, the Cali guys are kind of notorious for taking forever, or Yuma, that's those sorts of guys.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And it's and I think that's why it frustrates carriers a lot and brokers a lot, because it's, we got to get the truck to the shed as fast as possible. And then they're picking it still or they're cooling it. They have a reason for why it's not ready. It's usually a legit reason, but we're hustling the truck to get there and then calling him a bunch of times. Are you loaded yet? Are you loaded yet? And the guy's sitting there for 10 or 12 hours after we hustled him there. So I totally understand how it's frustrating. I don't know how to fix that issue, because a big part of what's driving everything here is consumers demand freshness, and to get as fresh as possible a product, it's got to load right when it comes out of the field. It's got to come up to us right away. We got to get it out to stores right away so they can buy it. So it's just kind of the nature of the beast, I think.
I mean, but to your point about like working with brokers who know produce, like those guys who know produce are going to work with carriers that know produce. And if you select carriers that don't know produce, like you're in for a bad time, even if it's a true team.
I have a story.
Right. I mean, it's like carrier selection is almost the most important aspect of it all, because the guy who knows what he's getting into when he's showing up at the cooler is, not going to bail after 2 hours or start calling you and telling you they're not, complaining about not getting loaded. So,
yeah. So I actually have a story from being a broker back in 2019. Like the brokerage landed like a huge produce company that was shipping like potatoes into like a facility that made potato chips. And so like as soon as the potatoes came to the facility, they were literally just getting cleaned, washed, and then cut up to be potato chips. It was like if they don't arrive on time, we're literally shutting down production. So the sales rep on it, he was phenomenal at selling, but the service was so bad because we never handled so much produce in in a short period of time. And we just had so many claims, so many problems. We were just booking DAT carriers all week long. And after 2 weeks, we lost the customer. Like, they're like, you guys are done. Like, this is awful. So, I mean, I'm guessing, Bill, you probably have, like, experienced brokers that actually, like, you probably don't, like, actually give someone a chance that you don't know, I'm guessing. Like,
So every now and then we will, but only when we know they have that produce experience, because you're 100% right. Like you can't, like we have our brokerage authority too, but like we could just go out to DAT and try to get the cheapest truck, and the cheapest truck is probably not going to be experienced in produce, and it's going to be a fucking disaster, because, you know, like Reed is saying, the guy's going to sit there for 10 hours to load. The driver's going to be freaking out, threatening to leave. You know, the claims and the shifting because of the bad packaging, like your general carrier is just not used to it, and it's just not worth it for us to save $100 on the line haul to deal with the repercussion of some a carrier or driver who doesn't understand produce.
No.
You see, you have your own broker's authority. Do you guys ever consider just doing it all in house?
So yes, but the reason why we don't is because the brokers that we have, I think there's an element of it that I don't want to backsell the guys that have been doing a good job for us for a long time. If I feel like you're doing a bad job, then we'll backsell you. I don't really care. But the guys who are doing a good job and who have been using the same carriers for us for a long time, we kind of give them that space. And maybe that's just because I was in that seat for a while too, and I know what it takes to do good carrier development, and then to have that you be backsold by a customer is tough. But the way that I justify that too is like when we go out to get a lane quoted, we're going to put that broker up against all the asset-based guys that we have too. So like when I came to the company 3 years ago, we were like 20% asset. I think now we're like 60% asset. So we're purposefully making that mix more asset-based, and then but kind of keeping the brokers who have been doing a good job, and then just making them price compete against the asset-based guys.
Your second to last bullet here is like, why do you still use brokers? And then in parentheses, a bunch of reasons. What value do they provide? Claims, that sort of stuff. Like, talk about that.
Yeah. So, Paul, you mentioned that claims are a big thing in produce, and it's tough. Like it's much more than I was expecting it to be when I came from the Coyote world, and a big part of that is how fragile the product is. Like you got to keep product within 4 to 5 degrees of set point, and you can't freeze it. And when it's 110 or 120 degrees in Yuma, that's hard to do if you have bad equipment or old equipment. And so we're always paying attention to stuff like that. Especially the stuff in Mexico is always stacked too high in boxes that have crappy corrugate, on pallets that are sometimes like literally spray painted blue to like be a faux Chet pallet, but not actually a Chet pallet. And so like, stuff like that happens all the time. And look, round fruit and square boxes, like we talk about, cantaloupes and honeydew melons. I mean, I don't know how to package it better. I'm not a packaging expert, but it's a problem. It's almost unavoidable. And so, but we can't, that's just, we're not going to consider that the cost of doing business on our side. When a carrier shows up to load that, even if it's 120 degrees outside and it's a load of cantaloupes and it's stacked super high, that's why we use guys that know produce. Like if once you sign that bill, you're responsible for it until it gets to us. And if it gets to us in bad condition, that we can't just eat that. Like that's not Ben B's problem. I don't know whose problem it is, but it's not ours. And the brokers add a ton of value in giving us protection there from your fly-by-night carrier who's going to disappear as soon as you try to put a claim on them. And so that's one of their major value adds. And then we work with a couple other guys who, are out in California or have just been doing this for a long time, who know all the sheds, they know all the close times, they call the sheds, they figure out what's ready, what's not ready. They're going to reroute the truck for us just based off of how do we get it out that night to make sure we get all the picks on. And they're borderline more expert in that with the sheds than we are. And so that adds a lot of value. But that's yet another reason why if you're not, if you're not really strong in produce and don't have the background and don't have those relationships, then your value is immediately less to us as a broker too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. There's a few things that I do want to talk about. One is like this year, produce 2024. How is it compared to 2023? Have you like seen any volume differences year over year? And overall, like what's been like the hot commodity right now, like that's shipping?
So they're, berries are always a big thing for us. Generally in the produce world, the more fragile the commodity, the more price volatility there's going to be. And if you do a good job with it, if you know what you're doing, the more money you can make. So, we're a big berry house. We feel like we do it well. We have a lot of good relationships with berry growers. And, like comparing last year to this year, everybody keeps saying the market's on the way up, and based on that 3-year cycle of freight rates, I got to imagine that it's going to be soon. At least maybe a 20% uptick by the end of the year is my random guess. But we're not getting a lot of pressure there on our side yet. Capacity's not really dropping off. We go through all these holidays, and it's not even an issue to find capacity. And so that's a big change, just a telling sign of where the market's at too.
For sure. Definitely. Do you ship a lot out of Mexico? I know you brought that up about like the Mexico, I guess what they ship a little bit differently.
Yes. Yeah. And we load most of that stuff in Nogales or McAllen.
Okay.
And so we partner with a lot of importers who get it up to that point for us,
sure.
and then we'll send a truck in there to load it.
Got it. Okay. Very interesting. Reed, what you got over there?
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
My phone keeps.
Ask me a hard question, Reed.
Sorry, I keep getting distracted because my phone keeps ringing. My headphones, like, even if I'm not connected to my phone, my headphones keep cutting out. So I've missed like half of what you just said in the last minute. But I'm back now. So I guess I'd be interested in like a particular. So you didn't really move much produce at Coyote, right? No. Okay. No. So you don't really have any good like claim stories or anything crazy happening, specifically for produce. Specifically for produce, yeah. So what like is there anything that stands out to you as like like a massive just cluster that's happened, like something that's just like beyond ridiculous that's happened?
This episode is brought to you by Isometric Technologies, ISO, the ultimate freight broker's secret weapon. With ISO, you'll have access to industry-wide service performance benchmarks, dynamic carrier and customer scorecards, and powerful analytics so you can understand your service strengths, address your weaknesses, and differentiate your carrier network from the competition. To learn more and get started, visit iso.io today.
Has anyone ever tried to rail a produce load? That's like uniquely stupid. That'd be like really dumb.
Produce load. I mean, I'm pretty sure produce gets shipped on reefer rail all the time.
Yeah, it does, but no, we've never had that. I mean, it's mostly like if anybody's railing produce, it's mostly potatoes. The stuff that's less fragile that can sit around for a couple weeks.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I don't know, Reed. I'm sure we have had some. I just can't think of anything that would impress you guys off the top of my head.
So what about let's go into this point on broker pitches. Sorry, this blinking light. Hold on, let me fix my blinds. But start talking about broker pitches. I think that's obviously there's a big broker audience here, broker heavy audience here. Like they're all cold calling shippers, wondering how to get in the door with folks. You've done. You sat in the shipper chair for a while, so why don't you talk about that? Let me fix this blinking light.
The strobe light? Yeah, so I think, when I got into this role, I was expecting us to be heavily solicited by brokers. I was expecting most of the pitches to be bad, and that's exactly what we get here all the time. And I think that the thing that boggles my mind a little bit is, if you send out 1,000 emails, knowing nothing about the company or what they need or what they want, I don't know how that ever gets anybody anywhere. I can't tell you how many emails and phone calls we get where the premise is we've got capacity everywhere. Let me quote some lanes. Like, why in the world would we let you quote some lanes? We don't know who you are. We don't know anything about your company. You haven't taken any time to know anything about our company. Like, why would we let you quote some lanes? And so, but then I also think, having been on the other side of the equation too, on the broker side, I think I remember I used to say stuff like, can I get a few minutes of your time so I can learn more about your company? And like, that's not going to work either. And so I think it's difficult. It's like, you want to, you have to learn enough about the company, or at least about the industry to figure out what's difficult. If somebody made a pitch to us that was like, we've got a lot of let's say, California-based team capacity, and we can do drop trailers in Detroit, then I would give that person the time of day. But it's like, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's like you got to figure out the small nuances of what the customer is going to want, and you got to kind of pitch that out of the gate. So I don't know the answer there, but I can tell you guys that as bad as you think the pitches are, they're bad and even worse than that.
And I get pitches from companies too, because for some reason, Freight Caviar, some broker just have me listed as a shipper. And so I get like these emails sometimes, and it's so bad. I just mark them all as spam and block them. It's just so annoying. So I mean, I can't even imagine if you're actually a shipper what you're getting. Have you maybe noticed, like, I guess potentially email or cold call working better, like in that approach?
I actually think email works better. We don't answer any of those calls. So it's. If you get through, it's kind of like more of an annoyance to our team than anything else. And so, I think when I was a broker, I thought, well, a call is going to work a lot better than an email. So my email is just going to get deleted right away. But I think the emails are actually read, like stuff like LinkedIn message or a way to kind of work around that. I think is a good idea. But it's more, whatever communication method you choose to use, it's more about just like knowing what the customer is going to value and what you're going to say before you get into that conversation and panic and go like, we have capacity everywhere. Let me quote some lanes. Give me some lanes.
Yeah, totally. Yo, Reed, stop clicking. Our audience is just going to be hearing clicks the whole time.
I don't know what it is about Riverside. I think the mic is like extra sensitive. I don't know.
It might be. Yeah.
I thought I had myself muted, but I guess not. All right.
No worries.
The lights, all good too. Strobe lights and keyboard.
Man, we're all over the place today. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I was going to go ahead in our bullet point here. So we hit on the percentage of teams, why Cradle to Grave is better for you, the broker pitches. Okay, now it's why produce transportation commands a premium price. So there's a few points that you made: seasonal capacity shifts, perishability of product, poorly packaged, palletized, a Mexican product, and claims. So I guess we kind of touched on that already, more or less. But can you kind of tell us about like the cost structure for produce? Like, so if you're looking at DAT, and I know you told us that if a single shows up for a team load, you half of what DAT does. How do you look at like pricing a premium, produce transportation load? How does that look?
So we're, since we buy so much on the spot market and since we are, essentially in the middle between the grower and the retailer, our number one job is to have product. Like if we have no product to sell, it doesn't matter what price we have it at. So like when we're looking at our cost structure, we've got the cost of the produce itself, and then we've got our cost to get it here, our logistics cost, assuming it's coming to Detroit. And those are the two main components, right? So we kind of distill that down to a cost per case, and then we'll go to the retailer and we'll add our margin and we'll tell them a price from there. So the freight cost really does make a big difference in our ability to do that. The other thing is we're on a terminal market here, so it's not like we're in a building that is just Ben B. Schwartz. We're in a building with 7 other companies that do the same thing that we do. And
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And Ben B does the most throughput here. We're the biggest company. We have the largest distribution radius. But if we bring in a load of navel oranges, and some of our customers actually like physically come down here every day and they pick out the product that they want. And so if they don't like what we have or the price that we have, they walk like 100 yards to the next place and they say, "What do you have in navel oranges? What's the price?" And so it's like hyper competitive. And obviously you're, it'd be like if you were a broker and you worked in the same building with 7 other brokers, and your customer could walk through and he could tell you the lane he's got, and he could just price shop it like right in front of your face and then make a decision every day.
That's so
yeah. So that part makes it really, really competitive. And, we had, when the market, whatever, 2.5 years ago was really out of our favor, there was some times it was something crazy. Like I want to say like $20,000 one day for a Pacific Northwest load to Texas. And that was like in the middle of COVID, because like whatever we build, the retailer, not that we were trying to overpay, but the retailers would pay anything to have product. And in that case, we'll pay anything to have product. And that was a crazy load. There was like, all the passes were closed. There was like one route to get in there if you were willing to risk your life. And so we found, like the one Sergey who was willing to risk his life over the icy path to get the apples or whatever it was.
Mm. That's why inflation was so high. Literally.
Yeah, they
$1,000.
I mean, it was definitely part of it, the skyrocketing logistics costs, and that was mentioned by all the retailers, when I go to conferences, stuff like that.
Totally.
Huge element that it was unexpected for them.
Do all of your competitors have some kind of distribution capability once the freight is brought in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so most of the time, I don't think that for produce wholesale distributors like us, I don't think that brokers really serve us very well on the outbound side. Most of the wholesalers are going to do that themselves. Because there's, you might be putting 3 different customer POs on a truck and then going to deliver them, and you're kind of, doing a more complex routing with shorter lead time there. But the inbound side, if you're calling a wholesaler who's large enough to buy in near truckload quantities from a single shipper or 2 or 3 shippers, it's not going to make a lot of sense for us to send, for me to like start like a Ben B long haul division and start like hauling our own freight out of California. Then I've also got to get the trucks out to California in the first place, and now I'm taking freight off that to get the truck out there before he picks up our stuff. I just think that the juice isn't worth the squeeze there to attempt that and deal with hiring more drivers, which is already a pain in the ass, and having more equipment to maintain. So I think we're better served by third-party carriers there or brokers.
So I'm wondering, Bill, how many assets do you have, if you're able to tell us? And then like what's the distance that they typically like drive out of like Detroit? And do you run backhauls with them with brokers or no?
So we have excuse me, around 20 trucks that do our outbounds, and then we've got 6 or 7 straight trucks just smaller ones. And trailer fleet, I think, is like somewhere around 40 or 45 now. Something like that.
For drop trailers?
Yeah, mostly drop trailers and
these are reefers.
Yeah, I mean, we also don't have enough space here, so we use the trailers for storage a lot too. And then as far as how far we'll go with our guys, we will go to like our daily runs. We're going to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Milwaukee, Memphis, Louisville, Virginia. That's kind of and Toronto. That's kind of like the main radius so far. And then once we go further than that, then it turns into a team load most of the time. And we don't have teams here. We're also our drivers are union too, so that makes it a little more complex. So why we can't have teams. So yeah, that's when we'll hire a third party to team it out to if we're going to Atlanta or Houston or a little further out.
Yeah, and since you're loading the truck, you could tell if it's a team or not right away before you load it.
Yeah.
You don't have any of your employees lying about being teams?
Not yet. But yeah, I mean, when we book those guys, we tell them like, we're going to dock check. So if you're not a real team, then please don't take the load. And most of the time that works. But then they feel uncomfortable. And they're like, they'll make like some other excuse instead of just saying like, yeah, I was lying. It's so we won't. They'll make some excuse and they'll be like, oh, actually, now I have to go pick up my kid from school and I can't do the load. It's like, all right.
One thing I've noticed about just produce companies, like distributors in general, is a lot of them I feel like have been around because you guys have been in business for a long time. Like I feel like every region has got their produce distributor that's been in business for decades, if not 100 years. So like why do you think that is? Like what's kind of the history of your company? What's allowed you guys to last so long?
Yeah, so we're on the fourth generation now, and I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you. But you are 100% right. There's so many companies in produce that are, especially in wholesale, that are family run, family owned for many, many years. And I think in Detroit, it'd be hard to be a new entrant into the market. Like I think part of the reason there is, so in any given year, we pull product from over 300 growers. And so over time, we've built up those relationships. We've figured out who's a good grower, who's not a good grower. How do we get the best quality that we could possibly have? Who's going to give that to us at X time of the year? And if you're just a new, if you're a Reed's produce shop and you're trying to open up today, and you're calling like, the best shippers that have the highest quality, you have no chance at getting product. You're going to end up with the lowest quality stuff because you're a new guy. Nobody knows you. Nobody knows if you pay your bills. Nobody knows if you can actually, sell their product and have it be profitable for you and them. So that's a big benefit that we have right out of the gate. And then we have things like, brand recognition in the Midwest that's strong and people trust the quality we have. You couldn't come into the Detroit market because there's no space. So if you wanted to be on the terminal, you couldn't, and now you're immediately losing, that walk-in traffic from like the 4 to 5 store independent retailers. You wouldn't have access to that because you'd be off-site somewhere too. So terminal markets in general are doing okay. Like Hunts Point in New York is pretty strong. Detroit's strong. Philadelphia strong. Chicago's strong. But a lot of them died. Cleveland is dead. Buffalo used to have a produce terminal that's now dead. And when you lose that mall effect, people start jumping off and doing their own thing and building their own nice new warehouses.
You called it the mall effect? Yeah, that's interesting. I went to I used to live in Boston. I went to the Chelsea market a couple times, and I that's just a wild operation at like 6 a.m. I mean, it's crazy. And I've actually been to Hunts Point too, and that's crazy. That's even crazier. It's chaos there.
Yeah, and if you came down here, you'd see the same thing. We start receiving at midnight, and most of our customers who are walk-in customers will be here at midnight. They're literally watching the stuff come off the truck, and then our salesmen come in at 3 a.m. and they'll work until around 1 p.m. And it's a tough life. Like, some brokers think that they have a grind, and like I have to answer the phone and watch my email 24/7. I mean, these guys, they come in at 3 a.m., they work until 1 p.m., then they go home, they sleep for like 3-4 hours, then they wake up, have dinner with their family around like 6, then they hang out with their kids till 8 or 9, and then they go back to bed, sleep for another 3 or 4 hours, and then wake up and come back to the terminal. And I can tell you that it's tough. Like, the human body is, I don't think, meant to have your sleep kind of in chunks like that. But our guys have gotten used to it, and so is everybody else that works down here.
Is the market, like you mentioned, all these, are you agreed with, there's all these distributors and wholesalers around the country. Is it kind of like a club? Like, do you guys all know each other to some degree? Like, is there some sort of like Catalina wine mixer event every year of all the produce wholesalers where you guys just get together and just like hang out?
Somewhat. So there's a company called the International Fresh Produce Association, IFPA, and they do a whole bunch of conferences. They have a global show that's massive. There's like 30,000 people that go to it. But they have smaller shows too. And I actually think for brokers, like, like a lot of brokers will go down to like food shippers, and to me, there's better ways to spend your money. Like, food shippers is like fucking like, flood in the water, and brokers are sharks, and all the customers are hiding, and I don't know if that's the best spend of your money. I think if you're really good at something, like one part of the freight market, say you want to be a produce broker, and you want to be the best at produce, go to a produce show that no other transportation companies are going to. Like, literally go on Google IFPA. It'll give you the full rundown, and you'd have carte blanche of having a lot of conversations that you wouldn't be able to have otherwise. I don't know why more people don't do that. It's not just specific to the produce industry. If you're really good at moving metals on step decks, go to figure out what the metal associations are, and go to those shows. I think there's lots of opportunities to do that are being missed.
That's some good alpha to all the listeners. Stop going to food shippers. Everyone talks about how like fun food shippers is, but then they also say that the shippers are hiding at that event. So that's good advice.
Especially nowadays, I feel like each year it gets worse and worse. There's probably more brokers going to food shippers, and when I was at TIA last month, the senior director of transportation from Walmart, who I know, like, came up to me, and like, he didn't have a name tag. He's like, I have to take my name tag off. I just had way too many brokers just try to like come up to me and sell me. So yeah, I mean, that's a smart strategy, Bill. I think that everyone listening that does customer sales should definitely do that. That's cool though. Reed, do you have any other questions? I know we're running low on time here. Or Bill, do you have anything you want to say?
I don't know. Reed, what are you cooking up over there? I think we covered a lot of good stuff.
No, I think we did cover good stuff. How I guess so. You're the CEO and COO.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. What role did you come in as?
As COO. So I went after. I kind of had a gap there in my background, but after I was managing the Midwest at Coyote, and I went to that company in Buffalo called Sanwell Distribution. I was executive vice president there, which basically meant I was in charge of applying a lot of the same principles that were successful at Coyote to their asset division and their freight brokerage at that company. And, it was smaller, but we were able to grow it by, 300 or 400% top line revenue growth over like 4 years. And a lot of it wasn't rocket science, to be honest. The company's got like 2.5 million square feet of warehousing space, and they were only doing business with like a brokerage business with like, I don't know, 20% of the companies in the warehouse. So, like John Perkovich is a good friend of mine who runs RPM and Royal Oak. He's a COO there. And he made a comment to me one day. He's like, dude, you should have a shock collar on all your sales staff. And anytime you walk past a customer in the warehouse, their product that you guys aren't moving their freight for, either through the S division or the brokerage, you should get zapped in the neck. And I was like, yeah, that's actually very true. And so we worked pretty hard on that.
So we did that.
Yeah, we did that. We added the shock collars. And so, yeah, I was EVP there, and then I came back here as COO because the guys at Benby were like, I've known them for a long time, and they said, we're really good at buying and selling produce, but we don't understand the logistics component. We don't want to, and we have all these other needs that are around that, whether it's tech or innovation or.
Yeah, talk briefly about that because we didn't even talk about that, and that's the last point.
That was the last point, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm like we had Bazooka at Coyote, that was their proprietary DMS, and I'm like in the produce world, I'm a snob for that type of tech because there's like two main ERP systems. One's called Produce Pro, one's called Famous, and everybody uses them in the produce world, and their TMS systems are kind of like add-ons, and to me they just suck. But that's because I've like kind of seen all of the best of what's out there, and so I took what I knew of Coyote. At Sanwell we had McLeod. I watched a whole bunch of demos for like C.H. Robinson's platform that they would give to customers, or I can't remember the other ones that I demoed, but I demoed like 4 or 5, and then I just kind of took what I thought was most applicable to our company, what was most exciting to me, and that's what we built. So that's what we're using now. We call it Benby Access, but the biggest difference I would say is like the transparency piece. So whether it's Project 44 or whether it's MacroPoint, I can take that information and not only can we automatically get that the location and ETA information back into the TMS. But more importantly, I have it on all of my sales merchandisers' phone. So like when they create a PO, they buy some product out there, they buy a load of strawberries. They have the logistics team schedule everything, but once it's scheduled and picked up and loaded, all they have to do is look at their phone to know exactly where that truck is, get an estimated ETA. And that really helps them be able to time the sale of the product to whoever they're selling to. So, and we built in a bunch of little fun efficiencies and things that are kind of unique to produce. And so I thought it was a very exciting project. I like that stuff. So
that's awesome. That's really cool. I imagine it was really time consuming to get that built up.
It was. I was hoping it would take 6 months. It ended up taking 2 years and probably double what we budgeted.
So that's about right. Yeah. Simply how it is. Bill, unfortunately we gotta end right now, but we'll be seeing you in a couple weeks on the produce season talk that we're doing at Trucker Tools. So thanks for coming on today. This was great. All the bullet points that you wrote out were also amazing. So appreciate that. But yeah, I'm guessing you don't want any broker to reach out to you. But let's just say there's a really good produce broker out there that's listening, and they think you might be interested in talking to them. Should they reach out to you on LinkedIn?
They should reach out to our director of transportation. Her name is Christine Carey. That you can find her on LinkedIn. And yeah, if you're somebody who is very knowledgeable on produce, or you run a lot of teams, or you can drop trailers in Detroit and have a way to do that, then definitely reach out to us, and we'll see if we can start up a relationship.
Awesome. Well, Bill, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming, and we'll see each other soon. I got to run to another podcast, so I'll see you guys later.
See you, Bill. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.